Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Carter. I'm the Associate Editor of Supply Side Food and Beverage Journal. Welcome to our session today, Supercharge Your Food and Beverage Supply Chain, Automation for Efficiency, Safety, and Growth. What if I told you that in the not so distant future, the biggest innovations in the food and beverage supply chain won't come from people, but from machines? As automation reshapes everything from production lines to order fulfillment, it's not just about speed. It's about survival in a hyper competitive market. So, how are we ready to embrace this change? And more importantly, how do we leverage these technologies without losing the soul of our industry? In this session, we'll explore real time data solutions to optimize production, enhance food safety through improved traceability, and gain complete visibility across the supply chain. Joining me today are Skylar Greer, Director of Account Solutions for Food and Beverage at Kenco, and Jordan Whites, co founder of Keychain, an AI powered platform that helps brands and retailers find manufacturing partners. So, first, please welcome Skylar to the stage.
Good morning, supply side. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. All right, let's get started. Go through. All right, there I am. So I will be talking about the roadmap of food and beverage as it applies to transportation and supply chain. So we'll go through a couple slides that will talk about types of transportation. We'll talk about steps in the journey, so what a shipment looks like as it flows through that portion of supply chain, food safety best practices, and data integrity priorities. So a little bit about me. I am Skylar Greer. I am the Director of Account Solutions at Kenco Transportation, specifically over our food and beverage vertical. So all of our customers that are for food and beverage, I am responsible for their transportation to and from, whether it be inbound, outbound of their manufacturers or their distributors. So first, let's talk about transportation, the lost sheep of supply chain. So why did I feel it was important for me to come to supply side and speak to you guys about transportation? Well, last year was my first year at supply side, and I realized that I was the only person here from transportation. And all talks about supply chain and the raw materials and distribution, there's a missing piece. And as we talk about food safety and all of the things and the regulations that FDA has on your warehouses, on your distribution warehouses and manufacturing warehouses, how awful would it be for you to do all of that work and then you go put it on a truck and it just goes all out of the window? So let's talk about that. So first we'll talk about the types of transportation, what that looks like. Not necessarily modes of transportation, but how you go about managing your transportation. Then we'll talk about a life of a shipment, from order creation all the way through to paying your carrier invoices. Food safety best practices. I'm sure you guys know about food safety as it pertains to, of course, your manufacturers, your warehouses, your procurement of your supplies, but what about the food safety as it pertains to transportation? And data integrity, predictive analytics. How do you go to the so what? How do you take it from this is just a data dump to now let's do something about it? So first off, supply chain. This is very familiar to everyone. This circle from raw material all the way to your consumers, you're very familiar with what this looks like. But there is something that's missing that's often not talked about. The missing piece between distribution and your retailer. A lot of my customers think that they just blink and all of a sudden their product gets into a store. But there's a lot of things that go into this. So let's talk about that missing piece. So there's three different types of transportation that you can look into when you're talking to either a provider or even your customers. And that's transportation management, or we call 3PL service, freight brokerage, and asset-based solutions. So when I talked to a lot of people yesterday around on the floor and we talked about transportation, they said, oh yeah, I know about brokers. That's not all that transportation encompasses. And you need to know the difference of those so you know what to choose wisely when it comes to moving your food and moving your food safely. So the first is your full service 3PL solution. And that can encompass the other two as well. So this is kind of like your easy button, your one-stop shop. You hire someone, you pay them a transportation management fee, and they just take care of everything for you. Some offer warehouse solutions as well. So you kind of really just sit back and you have time to now go and run your business. And you can just leave it up to them. There's no physical inventory, so they don't own any physical trucks for the most part. It's contractual, so mostly it's not, it's mostly 3 to 5 years contract, not really transactional. And like I said, they have warehouse opportunities. Asset-based carrier is just that. Physical trucks, you see out on the road, you have high visibility, you're talking to one person, but sometimes you get caught in that sole provider solution. And so it kind of drives down now your negotiations, your bargaining tools that you may have, because you really don't know what's happening on the other side of the aisle. And then you have your brokers. That's what everyone knows. They call the big name brokers and they go find you a truck. But do you have really a lot of control when you have the broker and the asset-based carrier? So as I go through the rest of my presentation, I want you to ask yourself two things. Is this something that you know? Or is it something that you know where to go find the information? Or number two, is this something that your transportation provider can give to you? And if not, we can talk. Life of a shipment. So I won't go through all of the details and all of the integrations and things that come into it. So I'll just leave it at, this is what it looks like behind the scenes. When you go and you put an order into your D365 or your AS400 or your SAP, these are all the things that go on before it even can get to a truck. So we go and we put it in, and then your TMS provider or your transportation management provider will take everything else. They'll take your food safety agreements into consideration. They'll take all of your information that they know about you and your carriers and become that liaison and that meeting point between the two. And then it just goes through, and it's a conversation really between systems. And sometimes there's some manual intervention, but it really is, if you have a true integration between the two systems, it's a conversation and dialogue between your system, your transportation provider, and the carrier. Now, food safety best practices. This is probably my favorite thing to talk about, so if I geek out a little bit, I'm sorry. Best-in-class industry standard. So first, food safety agreements. A lot of people have food safety agreements. The FDA has their own set of laws for transporting food, but do you have an additional food safety agreement just for your carriers? Again, if you don't know, do you know where to go get the information? Also, what's in your food safety agreement? How tight is your food safety agreement, and who is managing your food safety agreement? Secondly, seals, bolts, locks. We all know that, again, FDA laws say that all food has to be locked and sealed with a number, no matter where, how, mode, whatever, it has to be sealed. But again, is that in your food safety agreement? Do your carriers know that, but do you have a plan of what happens when your carrier gets there and there's no seal? Inspection plans. Do you have a plan when something happens? Because of course, nothing goes wrong in supply chain, nothing goes wrong in transportation, so who needs a plan? But do you have one? Do you have an inspection plan that if the driver shows up, he's got a truck full of flour and no seal? Do you have a plan documented so that everyone knows what to do just in case you aren't there that day? And this is something new that a lot of my customers are starting to pay attention to, and it's exposed bolts on the trailer. With theft being on the rise, freight theft being on the rise, specifically out of the West Coast, and food being the number one thing that people are stealing out of the trailers, it's easy. If you've got an exposed bolt, it's very easy for them to get the trailer door off and never compromise the seal. So the trailer shows up and they think everything's good. The seal is intact, everything is fine. But they've gone in, they've used the exposed bolts to unscrew it, taken the door off, removed whatever material they want, put the door back on, and now you open the door and it's empty. Awful, right? Next, claims and disposal protocol. Is your transportation provider equipped to know what to do if something happens where they need to dispose the freight properly? FDA and the government has very strict rules on how you dispose of spoilage, rotten material. Does your transportation provider know what to do, or do they have to call you to figure that out, for you to figure that out? One more thing for you to do in your day, right? And then lastly, contamination plans. Again, nothing ever goes wrong, right? So in your carrier your food safety agreement with your carrier, do you have it written out that says if something is to happen, if a seal gets compromised, if something happens between A and B, do not take it to that final mile? Do you have someone in the field? So sure, everyone has quality control in their warehouses, but do you have someone, or does your transportation management provider have someone that can come out into the field and inspect the freight so that it doesn't get to your customer? Because how awful would it be if it left your warehouse in perfect condition? Something happens on the rail, something happens in transit, and you show up, your customer opens the doors and does not look like you left it. So do you have plans for that? Does your customer have plans for that? Does your transportation management team have plans for that? And then lastly, the data integrity portion of it. So we like to call this the control tower. So everything on the right side of the control tower is really that day-to-day tactical X's and O's of the life cycle. On the left side is the aftermath. So what happened, that look behind, and also for that look forward. So when you talk to your transportation provider, whether it be in-house or external, do they have a control tower where you're able to go and say, I know exactly what's happening with my freight. I know exactly what's going on in Q3, the end of Q3, beginning of Q4. I know how to budget next year for my transportation costs. I know how to not pass my savings that these carriers promised me that they're gonna do, to not pass that also onto my customers, and I'm able to keep some of that. So we've got 4 main areas. So shipment visibility, self-explanatory, right? But with control towers, you can take that a step further. Everyone knows track and trace. Did it pick up today, yes or no? How many did you move yesterday versus last month? But what about those predictive analytics that let you know even before your customer does that this might be late? The GPS system is pinging that carrier and this might not make it. So you're able to get that proactive communication to your customer, because we all know disappointment comes from expectation. So if you set that expectation with your customer, hopefully it'll lessen the blow a bit. And then service performance. So that same carrier that came and told you that I can save you $3 million, you go into your control tower and you say, yeah, sure, you can save me $3 million, but your on-time delivery was 75%. And in the food and beverage world, yeah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. And so while, yes, you may have saved me $3 million in transportation costs, but now I've got Walmart fines out of whack because your service performance is terrible. So what do we do about that? So service, you can look at it in various different ways as well, because as you guys know, some carriers and customers require certain analytics and certain performance KPIs. So some customers don't care when it delivers, and some customers say, you told me it was gonna ship on Thursday, I want it to ship on Thursday. So you have measures to look at that. Then you have other customers that say, I don't care when you ship it, but you better have it here on my MABD date or you're gonna get fined. Or you have customers that have an MABD date, that have those fines and things like that, but they also require appointments. So the service performance and control towers can actually break down each type of KPI and service performance, so that when you do get those Walmart and Amazon fines, you can go back and say, well, wait a minute. I tried to get it there on your MABD date, but your appointment was not available until the next day. So let's think about that fine again. Lots of things that we can do with that. And then on the other side, your cost benchmarking and market analytics. If we go back to the thought of the carrier that's $3 million, right? All right, that might sound good to you. But then if you go into the cost benchmarking, well, if you charge my competitor this rate, but you're charging me this. So it allows that negotiation and that bargaining tool, because knowledge is what all that negotiation is. If I know better, I ask for better. And then the market analysis as well. A lot of people say that, oh, well, in food and beverage world, you're gonna have higher transportation costs because you can't go find mom and pop LLC to go and move your freight, because it has to have food grade, things like that. But I challenge my team to say, why do the carriers feel like they can charge us more just because I want the trailer to be clean? I'm not asking you for anything extraordinary. I just want you to have a clean trailer and lock it. So these type of things, the market analytics to tell you lane by lane where the hot markets are in the country, where it's the tender rejections. Again, I won't geek out into that. But yeah, all of the market analytics that come with that are all into a control tower. So lastly, what are some of the tools that you can use for that kind of helps the control tower function? One, a TMS system, transportation management system. Again, just the execution, the blocking and tackling the X's and O's of a shipment management. Track and trace, all that good stuff. And then carrier onboarding. Again, that same carrier that said he could save me $3 million, but you haven't had a trailer inspection in 20 years. That tool will tell me that. Again, that enhanced control tower we talked about earlier, and then sophisticated RFP tools for procurement events. So when we have, again, procurement events and we don't just have a single source provider, they become a bidding war, so to speak, on your freight. And so you're able to say, hey, you told me you were going to save me $3 million, but when I gave you the lanes and I gave you the requirements and it's got to be drop trailers here and live loads here, now that your song is changing. So that tool kind of helps you kind of put that all together. So again, I ask 2 questions that I asked in the beginning. Do you know where to get this information? And does your current transportation provider, whether it be in-house or external, provide these for you? And if not, give me a call. Thank you.
Hello. All right. So my name is Jordan Weitz. I am a co-founder of Keychain, and we are one of the first technologies to help brands, manufacturers, and retailers find each other really, really fast. So for some quick background on kind of who I am and what I do, so I actually grew up in the private equity industry, investing in a bunch of high-growth consumer brands such as Olipop, Better For You soda brand that maybe people have heard of, Vive Organic, an immunity shot, Koya, plant-based protein drink, and then uniquely went down the supply chain to buy and invest in contract manufacturing assets as well. So in categories that we thought were really exciting, but weren't necessarily sure what was going to be the emerging brand winner, we would go down and buy the facility that would then produce for a lot of the emerging brands. Why is this important? Well, I was uniquely kind of on both sides of the brand and manufacturing ecosystem and found that everyone had the same problem, which was how can I find the right people for me to either produce for or to produce the products I was looking to make. So I identified this problem and started digging into how it all happens today. It's usually dominated by brokers and consultants and lots of random Google searching to better figure out who can make exactly what you're looking for. So I started meeting up with my co-founders. They ran a business called Angie's List, which people may have heard of before. They were actually the CEO and chief revenue officer over there, building a marketplace in a very different industry, being home services. They were tired of electricians and plumbers, and I was excited about food and beverage, so we all quit our jobs to start Keychain, which we brand a little bit as a quasi Angie's List, but make it for the CPG manufacturing world. So why is that important? Well, at Keychain, what we're trying to do here is automate and digitize the supply chain to make it really easy, like I said, for brands to find the right folks and manufacturers to bring in more volume. But today, I want to focus on a couple things here, one being speed and the other thing being intelligence. First, how automation is obviously helping brands and retailers find the right facility faster than they ever have before for their manufacturer, ingredient supplier, or packaging supplier. And then, of course, how manufacturers are using data to make smarter decisions about capacity planning, expansion, and capability. So, starting with brands. Launching a product is oftentimes a race against time. We know this. Any delay in that opportunity means your competition potentially outpacing you, or even a retail private label product expanding before you have the chance. Traditionally, finding the right manufacturer, right, has been time-consuming, back-and-forth communication processes, and largely, and most importantly, uncertainty. So by using advanced filtering technologies today to better understand who has the right capability, who has the right capacity, what location in the country, and then even down to the certification level, brands are shaving off a meaningful amount of time from their product launch schedules. But this isn't just about saving time. It's really all about creating more opportunity for more innovation in the CPG space. In a world where consumer preferences are shifting rapidly and consumer preferences, where being first can secure a sizable market share, being first is no longer a luxury. It's really necessity for survival. And of course, being at the forefront of innovation is not just necessary for survival, but oftentimes helpful for thriving in the industry as well. But let's shift to the manufacturing side since we're at Supply Side West. Data is a game changer for manufacturers looking to build stronger pipelines and optimize their operations. With access to real-time insights, manufacturers can better understand which brands are actively in market at any moment in time, looking for their capabilities at that moment. So this isn't just about reactive demand, though. What we're really excited by is about predicting the future capabilities and capacity that's needed that the industry is looking for today. So by analyzing demand trends and looking at forecasts, manufacturers are able to better understand what areas they should invest in today for future growth. So data doesn't just help us build pipelines, though, today and fill existing capacity, but it, of course, informs critical strategic decisions for the future of your business. Consider this. The global manufacturing market for CPG is expected to grow between 5 to 7%. And we know manufacturing margins are oftentimes razor thin, usually below 10% sometimes. In this environment, manufacturers must really make the right decisions about where and when to invest. And expansion and capital are extremely high stakes decisions that executives need to make very, very quickly. But of course, leveraging data allows us to mitigate that risk. So for instance, if a manufacturer could anticipate a supply-demand imbalance in a category, they may be able to invest in that capability sooner than the actual market comes. Let's just say rewind 2 or 3 years ago. Could we have estimated that low-acid aseptic processing or even co-extrusion technology would be what everyone is looking for right now? If you did, you'd be able to invest in that capability, bring in that volume, and better be positioned for when your customers and even new opportunities are there looking for the exact capabilities that you have. So, of course, furthermore, the ability to make data-driven decisions allows everyone to supercharge their automation efforts, capacity planning, and then even geographic expansion. In a world where even a minor misstep can erode margins, the right investments made at the right time ensure that manufacturers can make competitive decisions and stay agile, staying in front of all of their competition. So, in closing, automation doesn't just allow us to build data pipelines, it's really the keys to building and future-proofing the industry of manufacturing today. Whether you're a brand trying to get to market faster or a manufacturer trying to stay ahead of the curve in terms of their capacity and capability expanding, we are transforming the way that everyone is operating. So, and at Keychain, we're excited to be at the forefront of this transformation, helping brands and manufacturers collaborate more efficiently than they really ever have before. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm gonna open it up if anyone has a question, and then if not, I have a couple of questions I could ask them, but I wanted to open up to the floor if you guys have any questions for Skylar or Jordan. No? Oh.
Thank you. I have a question for Jordan. Are you targeted more towards like to help retailers to launch their private label, to help either the small brands or the big brands? Is there a specific focus for a Keychain?
Yeah, it's actually all of the above. So brands that are just starting out, that are looking for their first manufacturer is kind of an obvious tool for them to use because they really don't know where to go. We also work with a lot of the largest brands in the world that do not have the data to better understand who has what capability at a given moment in time. For example, we had a request come in from a very big strategic looking to make apple juice, and they wanted us to help them figure out who had Tetra Pak capabilities, filling into a 200 milliliter carton, and could do that high acid in a very specific region of the country. And I think, again, like the level of granularity and intenseness around their expectations is very different from, you know, XYZ cookie brand to one of the largest strategics in the country. But we're helping all things brands and retailers find the right manufacturers. I think levels of sophistication change, of course, between them, but Keychain right now is a free tool for any brand or retailer to use and find the right manufacturer. So we're really just trying to increase transparency and make it real easy for whoever's looking to bring a product to market, do it very fast.
Hi, Jordan. I have a question for you. I was wondering, do you have any vetting process for the manufacturers that you bring on to your platform?
Yes, we do. It's very important to us, largely because the brands and retailers that are working with us trust us that when we have a manufacturer that's a part of our ecosystem, that they truly are best in class. So we have a pretty robust vetting and onboarding process whenever we bring in a new partner. It's a combination of checking certifications. Are you keeping up with your SQF level certification? Did you miss an expiry date? Are you above a certain grading, for example? We also have ratings that are not yet public, but we capture on a day-to-day basis with how did this brand that we made an introduction to, did they like their experience talking to this manufacturer? So there's lots of quantitative stuff that we're calculating, but also what we have a core belief in is the qualitative information that did this person respond to me quickly, and were they a great person to have a conversation with about a product that I was launching? So the answer is yes. Lots that kind of goes into it to make sure that we're only showing the best manufacturers for the categories we're in.
This question's for Skylar. As you think about the transportation industry in 2025, what do you see as the biggest challenge that the industry is facing from your guys' perspective?
I think the biggest hurdle that the transportation world is facing is uncertainty, the economic uncertainty. The last 2 years, the market has been very soft. We've had not a lot of demand and a lot of supply. Also, a lot of the drivers and their age, they're starting to age out, and we don't have a lot of drivers that want to do over the road anymore. They want to be home. They want to stay close to where they live. So we are facing a shortage of drivers that are leaving the marketplace, and so that can drive up cost as well. So with the uncertainty of the economy as well as a large force of the drivers leaving, that's a big thing that's going on right now.
So I want to ask both of you, how do you think food and beverage companies can build greater resilience into their supply chains to withstand any disruptions like we had with the pandemic or the climate uncertainty that's been going on, or like you say, the economy? How can, they build this into their businesses?
I think planning, of course, processes, making sure that you have contingency plans when things do go wrong. I think COVID showed everyone that you need to have a backup plan and a backup plan to your backup plan. I think a lot of times, especially for transportation, I've seen in the food and beverage world that we like to set it and forget it. And we like to just have a single source provider because it works. And I think that what COVID showed us, and as well as the economy right now is showing us, is that when we do have just that single source provider, it doesn't kind of gives them a little too much of a monopoly. And so when something goes wrong, you don't have those relationships that you've built with other carriers or other providers where you can go and say, hey, I need your help. So I think that it's really key to, one, make sure that you have those contingency plans, but also build those and foster those relationships with other carriers.
I was going to say, just to add on to that, visit your manufacturer and build in-person relationships. I know it's not going to totally change what they do thereafter, but one of the most important things that we found our customers doing. And then secondly, to Skylar's point, dual sourcing your manufacturing supply. I think a lot of people are very reliant on their one facility, and they've grown extraordinarily with that company, which is great. But always having that backup plan, whether it's on the East Coast, if the large majority of your supply is on the West Coast, making sure that you're covered across the country. Dual sourcing supply is one of the most prominent uses of Keychain, that people are happy with their existing manufacturer, but they're looking for a second one just in case.
Great. And I'll end with this. So are you seeing food and beverage companies addressing sustainability within their supply chains to, minimize waste and things like that? Or what's the role that is playing?
Yeah, I do, especially around CO2 emissions and the greenhouse effect. A lot of my customers now are making sure that we report on that and mileage that is saved. And when we talk about consolidations and optimization, to make sure that when you're utilizing your miles, basically, you don't have empty miles, so to speak, when you are traveling from A to B. If you've got a customer that's from, let's say, from Chicago to Atlanta or to California, that you aren't unnecessarily driving those miles would drive up the CO2 emissions and things like that. So that's really the main thing that I see, is that they're really pushing for us to track, trace the CO2 emissions and to be cleaner.
Interesting. Are you seeing sustainability in?
Yeah, definitely. I think just being in the nature of, we have projects that come in from lots of brands. I think that there has been a surge in sustainable packaging that has been requested, which has in turn oftentimes been tricky to find facilities that can produce and fill new age packaging that hasn't yet hit mass market. So that's definitely one thing. The second thing, I think brands and retailers have a much higher expectation on what their facilities do, whether it's socially, environmentally, you name it, from a certification perspective, but even how they treat their employees, water practices, so on and so forth. So I think sustainability as a whole is definitely something people are requesting more. And I think it's on manufacturers to kind of meet those requests and hopefully change the way that they've done business historically. So
Great. Well, thank you for all of your insights, guys. I appreciate it. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, that's all we have
Appreciate
time
it.
for. So have a great day, guys.